Good day and welcome to tonight's edition of Sunday Politics, a political program for the benefit of you, the Nigerian citizen. My name is Suleiman. On Saturday later this week, governorship elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states will be holding as Nigerians in those states elect their new governors. That will be the first in a series of off-season statewide elections that will be coming up between now and the next general election in 2007. After this, Edo, Anambra, Ekiti, and Osun states will follow in the coming months and years. According to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, all 18 political parties are fielding candidates in Kogi State, 17 in Imo State, and 16 in Bayelsa State. The list also shows that 2 political parties are fielding female candidates in Bayelsa State, 1 in Kogi State, and none in Imo State. So of all the 40, 50-something candidates, we have just 2 female candidates. But again, in each of these three states, election campaigns have begun since June and will be ending later on Tuesday this week. In Kogi, some of the campaign activities have resulted in violent skirmishes between the 2 major rival parties, the ruling APC and the main opposition Social Democratic Party, SDP. In Imo and Bayelsa, there are 3-way contests between the ruling PDP in the state and opposition APC and Labour Party, respectively. So tonight, we ask, will the Labour Party spring a surprise in Bayelsa and Imo? Will Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State retain his position in Imo? What chance for Murtala Ajaka of the SDP or Ahmed Ododo of the APC in Kogi? And above all, will Nigerians see an election that is free, fair, and peaceful in those states? Joining me in the studio tonight is Mr. Amsfree Ajanaku. He is program lead for countering election disinformation at the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, Abuja. Also with me is Mr. Shehu Ata, a politician and public affairs analyst, and I just found out also a prince of the Kogi Royal House. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we'll just go straight into it. We'll start with you, Mr. Amsfree. The last question, about whether or not Nigerians can be expecting a free, fair, and peaceful election, particularly emphasis on peaceful, because in Kogi State we have seen developments that most people are not happy about, including INEC has had occasion to cry out, about the worsening level of violence in the states or associated with these campaigns. And your organization, CDD, track threats to these elections. You track all kinds of threats and trends about these elections. So what can you tell us about these 3 elections so far?
All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Let me say, first of all, that using the opportunity given to us by our Countering Election Disinformation Project, CDD currently has trained youth that were deployed across the 3 states, not in a very big numbers, but 25 per state. And the role of these young people is to help as soldiers of mouth in countering disinformation, because disinformation is one of the major drivers of some of the skirmishes you are seeing in the electoral processes in those states. First of all, you have to look at the background we are coming from, the 2023 elections itself. One of the major challenges we saw in that election was the question of identity-driven disinformation. And in a state like Kogi State, that is also...
Identity-driven, what does that mean?
Yeah, identity-driven. Now, identity in form of ethnicity.
Okay.
And so in a place like Kogi, you are having discussions around the Igala agenda, the Ebira agenda, the Okun agenda. And you are having the political actors shape the narrative around the elections along those lines, instead of actually focusing on the cardinal governance issues, which should actually drive the debates in an election. And so what we have tried to do within our own civic space within that role of civic responsibility, sensitizing the citizens, is to say, let's leave all of those factors aside and focus more on the bigger picture. Okay. How are the political actors planning to deliver on accountable governance to the people and effectively ensure that the electoral process translates into what in quotes Nigerians will refer to as the dividends of democracy. So that is part of the things driving our conversation. We have also tried to spotlight the issue of participation through our fact-checking. For example, we know that historically marginalized groups like women and people with disabilities are not so much involved in the process, and we have been trying to ensure that we serve like a shield to some of those people. Number one, we did a lot of fact-checking, for example, to help the citizens in these states to understand that when disinformation targets women, whether as voters or as candidates, you tend to remove them from the process because you kind of blindside them and don't allow them to participate. And some of those disinformation targeting them, we have been at the forefront of countering it through our fact-checking process. Also important is the election management body itself. There are also targets of disinformation, and that leads to the delegitimization of their roles.
Yes.
So the people no longer have that confidence that. So if you ask the question whether the elections will be free and fair, we have to look at it from the perspective of the citizen, the voter who wants to go and vote. So if the voter does not feel that INEC will be able to effectively play its role because some fake news has been circulated about the role of INEC, then it becomes a problem, about the confidence of the voter to actually participate in the process. So we have, several of these issues which we are tackling.
Thank you, Mr. That's an important work, particularly the perspective about how the election management body is implicated in a whole sea of disinformation, which then feeds into cynicism about what it does in the system, But I will come back to that. Maybe let me bring in the Prince, So you're from Kogi State. You're also a politician, but tonight you're more of a public affairs analyst. So what can we, Nigerians are a bit apprehensive, about what is going on in Kogi State, with regards to today the vehicles of, or the convoy of governor and convoy of candidate will be, clashing and then resulting in some cases even people dying. Why is this happening, and what does that portend for the election later this week?
Very, very good. And this is a very good question, and I can see connected to where my brother stopped.
Yes.
Like he mentioned the question of identity politics.
Yes.
If you see the scenario playing around Kogi State today, Kogi State is just like a mini Nigeria.
Yeah.
That is when our politics, we see, we trumped up ethnicity, religion, the groups, the question of identity politics. And you see, most of the violence or most of the disinformation, misinformation, fake news emanates from the question of the identity politics you was talking about. And that is where media information literacy comes in, right? Because, this is the era of social media. Anybody can just pick up his phone and just drop the message there. Whether it is fake or misleading or disinformation, nobody cares to know. So the question of media information literacy comes in here. You see, the stakeholders are being painted with identities. We're talking about INEC, the question of fake news. You throw out fake news there to delegitimize an institution of governance. INEC is an institution. We have other stakeholders, the voters at the institution. You throw up an identity that does not belong to a certain set of people. The issues we're talking about is healthcare. We're talking about education. We're talking about security. Nobody is talking about those issues now. Somebody wants to be identified with Amani Galaman. Somebody wants to be identified with Amani Brahma. What does that put food on the table of an average man on the street? The question that we should be asking is governance. Yes, by the way things are going, APC has a structure,
Before you go into that campaign, let me let me take you on. Some people are saying that the problem also, particularly in the particular case of Kogi State, is the political actors.
Yes.
Particularly the leading parties in the state, the APC and the SDP. There is understanding that the APC, Murtala Ajaka himself was formerly in the APC, and then because he couldn't find space to actualize his own ambition within the rules as allowed by the party structures in the state, he decamped to SDP. So what role do you think these actors, the politicians, the political leaders in the state, including those in government or those in opposition, what role do you think they have been playing in fueling these situations in the state?
This is a very big question because at the end of the day, the leaders, whether the political leaders or the leaders in governance, cannot exonerate themselves from what is happening in the society.
It's happening right before their eyes.
Right. They cannot exonerate themselves. But we have an issue here.
Okay.
The issue we need to identify that we have an issue. We have an issue of politics of ethnicity. We have an issue of politics of religion. We have an issue of politics of disinformation, false news, fake news, just to discredit your opponent to have your own way. But we're not talking about the issues of governance. We're not talking about delivery, results, precedents, antecedents, capacity. That is the question we should be asking. If we can focus our attention on the real issues, I think we'll have covered the mileage.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So, to take you again, the political actors, what role do they play in this disinformation? Because not just citizens, sometimes the political actors themselves, the real politicians, they have even bigger platforms to spread disinformation, even than ordinary citizens, some, if not disinformation or misleading information in some cases. And in Kogi, we have seen that several times, where somebody will say, oh, I have been attacked, and then later he will come out and say, no, it was not an attack after all. It was, and so on. So what's really...
Absolutely. I think we have to put in place a process of thinking through ideas that we hold the political leaders accountable, and the political actors, we absolutely have to hold them accountable for the carnage that is, because I take this as a carnage because if people in communities, ordinary citizens in communities, are now up against each other, at each other's throats because of the messaging that the political actors have enabled. So they are the ones practically fueling, they're not just fueling, the disinformation, they are funding it actively. Even from past election, you hear of groups like Data Boys, young people who are actively engaged and funded to just, sit somewhere and litter the whole space with false news, and at the end of the day, they affect the choices of voters. Because if a voter, for example, is about going to the polling unit on election day or just before election day, and the person is already hearing that, INEC is not going to deliver election materials. That is one of the fact checks that we're currently working on now.
Interesting. Something
circulating in Kogi East that INEC has said it's not going to deliver materials there.
Which can dampen people's morale to come out to vote.
Exactly. And it is the political actors that are doing this. That's why I talked about accountability. So for us at the CDD, we have always argued that it is not enough to agonize on these issues. It is also very critical that we should organize and find ways to call out those who are involved in these things that do not really help our democracy. Because we also see what is happening across the West Africa sub-region. Democracy is facing serious upheavals.
Yes.
So if the political actors continue to muddle up or muddy the waters, what you have is that people will completely lose trust. And that is already happening. We saw the level of participation that came, that we saw during the general elections itself, the 2023 elections. We saw that the huge number of close to 80 million people who registered. We saw the numbers that came out. That is a situation of decline in democratic participation, apathy, and in current times,
95 million people registered, 93 million registered,
exactly.
Just 25 million participated.
Exactly. So it's also a similar thing that is happening in the States, because we organized focus group discussions in the States where we sat down with civil society leaders at the local level. We sat down with the media and asked, what they could share with us in terms of the challenges, and they told us that this thing, especially in a state like Kogi, it's a deluge, it's a flood. Even those of us who are doing fact-checking, we are practically overwhelmed
by the amount of disinformation that is coming out.
As we are trying to fact-check this one, another one is coming. In fact, to the point now that we have a dedicated line where we are asking citizens, report any information you're not so sure if it's accurate, because we know that this is. Because there's something called in the science of politics and governance, the civic will.
Yes.
So the civic will is affected when you have situations like this. This is why CDD, as supported by the National Democratic Institute, has been doing very, very massive work in this area, and we have been appealing. Good enough, the political parties just signed the peace accord across the states. We are hoping that they also use that peace accord as an opportunity to reflect on what we are enabling to happen. How is it, dampening the will of the electorate, in the democratic process? And if the electorate completely abandons the democratic process, what is the future of Nigeria's democracy?
Certainly there will be crisis of legitimacy of the democracy. But let me take him on the last point that he made about signing peace accord. It is politicians who, we have just been told, also fund these disinformation activities, who at the same time also come to the round tables and big tables, to put their signatures to peace accords. So what guarantees are there that these peace accords will be followed to the letter by those who have signed them, particularly in terms of putting their supporters in check?
The leaders. In the Kogi state, for instance, we have the state governor, we have the other political stakeholders, because the APC is contesting, the SDP is contesting, PDP is contesting. In other states, the political leaders will have to be convinced by themselves that this peace accord we have appended our signatures on will thrive. The peace will thrive. So if the leader can stand by their resolutions, I think they should be able to whip their own followers in line to ensure that there is peace in the course of the election. Because if there is violence, that brings us back to where he's coming from. Voters' apathy.
Yes.
People will not go out to vote.
Absolutely.
Then some legitimate decision, people that will have want to vote for some candidates will have lost their opportunity of, casting their votes. And that still goes down in the end to affect the final. Because if you have legitimate voters, 15 million, and you're having just 2-3 million people coming out, or maybe 500,000 people coming out to cast their votes. So how do you now when you take the percentage of 500,000 from 15, what percentage of the population, voting population is there?
Exactly.
So the legitimacy of the process, the democratic
and the outcome
process,
also.
I get it. So not creating an environment of peace can affect the outcome of the. But signing the peace accord just like you are taking a 100-meter race, and you are at the 80-meter point, right? 80-meter point. You want to sign a peace accord. What are the narrative that we, the political actors, have been shaping from the beginning?
From the beginning of the race to this point.
Till the point you are signing that peace accord.
Very
because,
important, yes.
you know, we are on the final stage of the process. So your peace accord will not really make much impact. So that is where media information literacy comes in. Like, okay, we expect that a state like Kogi will have high number of enlightened youths by the virtue of the location of the Kogi State.
But let me take you on
a lot of youth on the media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, you're certainly right that when voters sense that the process, you know, is violent, or is associated with violence, they are not going to come out to vote.
Absolutely.
But there are accusations, actually, that in fact is a strategy, you know, of the ruling party in the state. This is not, you know, there are accusations that that's in fact what the APC wants, that if people don't come out to vote,
I will disagree with you on this.
Feel free to disagree.
I will disagree with you on this. Do you know why? Because when you look at a state like Kogi State, for instance, the APC in Kogi State has been very, very consistent. Consistent in the sense that this is a party that have network from the unit to the local government to the state level, right? And the governor has been able to hold the party together. From inception till date, the party is growing. Just about a few days ago, we had incidents of stakeholders decamping from PDP to the APC. If the party was not a viable platform, political stakeholders will not be decamping too. So the point I'm trying to make here is this. APC in Kogi State is not struggling to win an election.
Okay.
Right? APC, the other political parties like the SDP and the PDP that will struggle to win, to even make a statement. APC, if election is going to be conducted today, will win fair and square without throwing out propaganda, without throwing out fake news, without intimidation, without harassment, by creating a free and fair environment. APC will win free and square. Right? So it is not a question of the ruling party, but it is the question of the opposition. Are they willing to abide by the rule of the game?
Thank you.
Are they willing to stop fake news? Are they willing to stop harassing other political parties like the APC? Are you getting it? By misinformation, disinformation, fake news? Because at the end of the day, it's this fake news that is causing, let me say, 90% of the issues we are having in Kogi State.
Thank you very much for that. But I'm sorry, we have a situation here where 3 parties are represented in this race, all of them representing the tripodal major ethnic groups in the state. You know, the Okun, the Igala, and the Ibires. You know, PDP, SDP, and SP, SDP, right? So from your work on the ground, you know, since you are in the field, you know, you interact with lots of people, even the 25 people per senatorial district or per state. 25 people per state is massive, actually, because to pay all of them, you know, pay their transport and get them to work, and they will be interacting with different kinds of people, you know, that's for a civil society organization, that's already massive.
It's massive, actually.
So what insights are you getting at this point from, you know, to the extent where this tripodal, you know, ethnic leaders, if you like, because whether we like it or not, the election has already been ethnicized, you know, as a race between Igala, Ibira, and Okun, you know, and their relative numbers, you know, the demographics of the state also come into play, in the sense that they're not equally distributed in terms of population, but the parties that they represent are also not equally distributed in terms of structures as well on the ground. So what insights are you getting from all of this? Yes.
All right, thank you so much. I think that's a very, very interesting question. The number one insight we have seen from our interaction is the fact that we as stakeholders, it's like the information loop is way ahead of what we are capable of apprehending, because one of the major feature that I saw from my interaction with stakeholders in the state, from our focus group discussion, and from the nature of the disinformation that is coming out, you are seeing increasingly that information channels are becoming diffused.
Interesting.
So away from your traditional news sources, you are having Facebook groups, you're having WhatsApp groups. In fact, as a matter of fact, during one of our focus group discussion, it was said that Facebook was a medium for production of community news.
Interesting.
And then WhatsApp, is now the medium for dissemination. So a lot of conversations are going on that you and I
are not even aware of.
You're not aware of.
Interesting.
And so that diffused nature of the information space is, raising a lot of dust, because you not even have, community groups that can create their own news and share it, within a particular circle that ordinarily other stakeholders may not even. So you even now have information and ideas bubble. So if, for example, a community association WhatsApp group, they have a particular narrative they are already spinning, it is difficult to counter it because you are not part of those groups and you are not really playing there to help people understand, no, this issue you are discussing is not actually the way you think it is. Because, so what we have tried to do through our project with the support of the National Democratic Institute, CDD, is to penetrate into those diffused information spaces. Okay. And that's why the 25 people we recruited per state, they are not meant to be from urban centers alone. They are supposed to be in rural communities. They are actually supposed to be part. In fact, one of the mandates we gave them, you must go into those community WhatsApp group and understand what the people are saying and understand what the narratives are, such that if you have a clear understanding of what the narratives are, we can now know the right message, to counter whatever disinformation. And of course, much of what is being discussed in those groups, is about how this other ethnicity is trying to do this, how that other ethnicity, and I must be very frank, the people driving this thing, they cut across all the political parties.
Interesting.
Because when we did, some of the key informant interviews in the build-up to our work on the elections, if you go to the APC and you ask them, they will say it's the SDP that is pushing this information. If you go to the PDP will say, no, we've never used this information before. But tomorrow morning you are going to see a statement that says, that shows you that, okay, those parties that are in denial, they are actually, so across the board, there is no exonerating any of the parties. But what we also found is that there were also some political actors that are victims. For example, in the early stage of the election, sometimes this year, in the early stage of the campaigning, a particular political party complained that there was a disinformation that all their local government chairmen across the local government had stepped down for another party. And they did not have the capacity to start responding to that. To counter that. And before you knew what was happening, the thing spread around and, in fact, people started acting on that information like it was true. There was also the question of one of the female candidates who was said to have stepped down for, the ruling party. And when we had an interaction with her, she said, well, I am close to the ruling party. I'm close to the ruling party, but my agenda is I want the interest of the women to be taken care of. It's not like I've stepped down, but I'm negotiating.
She could have been speaking from both sides of the mouth as well. Nigerian politicians.
So we saw.
She could have stepped down, but saying something different to
Exactly. So we saw all manner of claims and counterclaims. But our role as a non-partisan actor actually is to now sit down and say, how do we intervene in a way that citizens can have a clear understanding? And how do we also use the same technology don't assume that these people in the rural communities, they are not in firm grip of the technology. They are using WhatsApp, they are using Facebook, they are using many of these platforms, and they are sharing information extensively in a way that even
you living in Abuja may not
exactly.
be
In fact, one of the issues that came out of our focus group discussion was that people in the urban centers were saying that things that were happening in even Lokoja as a capital, for example, using Kogi as the example, it was people in the rural areas that were calling them to tell them, oh, we heard that so and so is happening. That is the power of technology, the diffusion of information. And so we think that there has to be an all of government, all of society approach to this, which is why in our engagements we have involved the NOA. We are working with the NOA in the state. We are working with INEC itself.
I think we just have about a minute to time for us to have a break, and when the break comes, we will be taking responses. But there's a question I have to ask you, which is that there's a lot of, and we have taken so much time on Kogi. When we have Imo and Bayelsa to also discuss, we'll be moving to that.
Factors that will affect them eventually.
Most likely.
A question of insecurity.
Thank you. So the question is that in Kogi State, you have had 8 years of a governor who is from the Ibera side, and you still have that same party fielding another Ibera side, that another Ibera for the same position. That's another 8 years. So prospectively, people are worried or concerned, in the news, in the social media, that you're going to have 16 years or 12 years of one side as against the other two sides. But before you answer that, we'll be taking a short break.
Okay.
And when we return, our phone lines will be open for our viewers to also participate in this process by phoning in to ask their questions or make their contributions. When you do call us, please just tell us your name, where you're calling from, and go right ahead to ask your question or make your contribution. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
It was never a consensus. We did all our best. You see, in politics, you give your contribution to the best of your ability.
If you want, I'll forward to you this statement. You go to this bank and verify.
But there are people who say not spending money is not a virtue in itself.
Let me finish.
Because there's so much to be done.
Let me finish. Now, you don't allow me to explain myself.
The recent development shows abductions are now a factor of informants embedded in community.
It's not about the people of Katsina to say that, no, during my administration I was able to stop insecurity. No, it's about collective responsibility for all of us.
And what we should ask ourselves is not what has been seen, is the life better? Are there more people who are unemployed who are not become employed? Is the level of corruption has gone down? Is there inclusion? All those issues.
We're actually a gas country with associated oil. Our focus has always been on oil, that we have never paid significant attention to gas.
To do it effectively, we need to have honest conversation with ourselves. Government needs to come down from its high horse and communicate with the people and build trust.
There must be a solution. We cannot continue this way. They must come back to the table and agree. So whose child will do deny education? All these children that sit for them, they want to go to higher institutions.
But just a short while ago you were saying that why bring 10 children when you cannot cater for them? So why bring more universities when you cannot cater for the existing?
Welcome back. This is Sunday Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing the off-season elections in Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa states, and have with me two guests who I'm sure have been doing justice to the issues. So before we go to Imo and then Bayelsa, to what extent is this issue the fact that you have an Igbira governor for 8 years, and then you are going to have another, and then a candidate of that same party again. To what extent is this driving some of the issues we're talking about?
Yeah, good. You know, I'm even happy for people to even recognize the fact that because there is a candidate on the APC ticket,
yes,
so there is 90% or 80% likelihood that that candidate will win the election. So the question will be managing victory. You know, if the APC governor, His Excellency Governor Yahaya Bello, has not performed well on security, on the economy of the state, on trying to unify the various ethnic groups within the state, we won't have a deputy governor like Chief Edward Onoja going all out to campaign for the APC, knowing fully well that the candidate the APC is presenting is coming from a governor's side that has already spent 8 years. That means Kogi State is actually the progressive state.
Okay.
We're trying to look beyond your ethnic coloration, beyond your tribal coloration, beyond your religious coloration. We're talking about delivery. It's have shown clearly that Governor Yahaya Bello, within the last 7.5 years, has been able to bring democratic dividends to the Kogites in terms of security, in terms of healthcare, in terms of trying to unify.
I think we can move away from the campaign for APC now to Imo State. So thank you very much for your comments here. Yeah. So in Imo, okay, there's a caller on the line. Callers have a right of way once we enter into the call segment. Yes, go ahead. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, Suleiman, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening once again, the analyst in the studio.
Yes.
Yeah, once again, I'm Shamaki from Nasarawa.
Shamaki from Nasarawa. Go ahead.
Yeah, on the issue of governorship elections. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Just go ahead. You'll be speaking. We're hearing you.
All right. Yeah, like I said, we have 3 states that will be having elections, which is Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa. And people are expecting free election, fair election, and credible election. Because concentration will be given today because the election is not across all over Nigeria. So we expect good thing out so that it will serve as a democracy for people to see. On the issue of Imo State, the hope of Zuma is to contest for second tenure. And what happened to Labour leader in that state is very, very uncomfortable. If really he wants to win elections, that would have been done in that state. Because I believe the civil servants or workers in that state are also a part and parcel to contribute in that particular state. So to me, what happened there is uncomfortable to me. So this is my take.
Thank you very much, Shamaki from Nasarawa State. So let's go straight to that. The attack on the NLC President Ajero, he's from Imo State himself. And Labour have legitimate claim to being part of politics. Indeed, in some countries, Labour parties have close affinities and affiliations with Labour unions, you know, and so on. So what does this portend for what the election will look like in Imo State? Because it's a key state. It's almost more or less one of the key states in the southeast right now.
Yes, so as civil society, I think we have a responsibility to unequivocally condemn that very unfortunate and very barbaric incident that happened in Owerri, where the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress came under a very vicious attack that left him with serious bodily harm to the point that he was beaten in a way that even we will not wish that even for our worst enemies. That is unacceptable, and we call a civil society.
Thank you. We have a caller on the line. Yes, go ahead. Tell us your name, where you're calling from, and welcome to Sunday Politics.
Okay, I'm Raphael from Lokoja, Kogi State.
Raphael, go ahead from Lokoja, Kogi State.
All we are praying for is to have peaceful elections because to just like I elected, the elect chairman said, having an election in Kogi State has not been very easy. So we pray that whoever will win will be for the good people of Kogi State. Because the citizens in particular have gone through a lot. So we are praying that the man that will come will be somebody like we had in the past, and the testing of the Ibrahim Idris, popularly known as the. So we pray that we are very glad to have somebody like that, because we have gone through a lot. People of us have gone through a lot. You look at the past 8 years, big bonus has not been paid, annual increments have not been paid.
Raphael, are you saying that people in Kogi are not satisfied with the current state of things?
Honestly, we are not satisfied.
Okay, go ahead.
We are not. We are not. So that's why we are praying. Most of us are on our knees, praying to God that somebody like you come on board. We don't care whether the person is an Islaman, an Igala or an Igbo person. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Raphael from Lokoja. Yes, you were talking about
yes. So
and Nigerians are yearning for the issues that you mentioned earlier. They don't really care about these ethnicities. I'll come back to that. Yes, please.
So we call for accountability on that incident to ensure that those who were involved in that are held to account. But in the wider picture of the election, of course, we know that one of the driving forces for the context of the election in Imo State is the separatist agitation.
Yes.
That you have in the southeast.
Agitation for Biafra.
Exactly. That agitation.
I have to stop you because we have a caller on the line. Yes, please. Yes. Welcome to Daily Sunday Politics. We've just lost that caller. Yes, please, quickly.
Yes. So I think
another one. This segment is, once we get to this segment, the voters, the callers, have the right of way. Yes, go ahead, please. Yes, please.
Yes. So I think it's time stakeholders sit together, sit down and say, how do we address, because it did not
Let's take this call. Yes, please. Welcome to Sunday Politics.
Yes, Ismaila from Boko, Benue State.
Once again?
Ismaila from Boko, Benue State.
Ismaila from Boko, Benue State. Go ahead, please. You're welcome to Sunday Politics.
Ismaila from Boko, Benue State.
Yes, we can hear you, Ismaila from Boko. Go ahead and make your contribution or ask a question.
The issue of the election in Kogi State, I want people to take it as an election not based on ethnicity.
Interesting.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, and Nigerians can hear you too. Go ahead.
I want to advise myself from Kogi State. So the election should be based on issue based, not ethnic coloration.
Thank you. Thank you, Ismaila from Boko. Election should be issue-based rather than ethnic coloration. We'll come back we'll continue with the Imo situation because we've had quite a lot of time for Kogi already. Is the APC afraid of the Labour Party in the southeast in general, particularly in Imo in this election?
The incident that happened in Imo States was unfortunate, but when you analyze this situation critically, the Labour Party and the NLC.
The caller just has come in. Yes, welcome to Sunday Politics. Go ahead. Okay.
So the Labour Party and the NLC should be able to separate themselves. Where you have a Labour that's clearly indulging the body.
One more call on the line. Yes, welcome to Sunday Politics.
Hello.
Hello, yes, welcome to Sunday Politics. Tell us your name, where you're calling from, and then go right ahead and talk. Oh, I think he's having problems. Yes, please.
So when you have a labor in the NLC that cannot delineate between the party itself and the labor force, you have a leader, Joe Ajero, the labor president, that is going to, coincidentally from Imo State, that wants to mobilize labor to shut down the activities of governance on the eve of an election, and where we have a labor with a history of being political. So you will not put yourself on the harm's way. If you are an interested party, you come out and say you are an interested party. Already he has placed, because with that conflict of interest, and the Labour Party, you cannot, you have a Labour NLC that cannot differentiate itself from the Labour Party. So what it means is that Joe Ajero is an interested party,
like any other politician.
Like any other politician. And if you are ready to put yourself on a harm's way, then whatever comes your way, you should be able to manage it. His cause was legitimate. You have civil servants, they have issues with the government. Yes, it's a legitimate cause, but how do you go about it? Your way, the modalities, the way you go about it. You can't go to a state on an eve of an election and clearly taking a side, and you expect that the hoodlums or whoever those at the identity, because it was not the state, it was even the state that saved the day, because it was the state that had to mobilize.
You mean the state government?
The state government to even save him from the situation from where he was being attacked. So I don't know, you cannot implicate the state in this incident, because already he has placed himself on a harm's way. You have to, are you a labor union leader or you are a political leader? You will have to answer that question first. Unfortunately, that was the difficult entanglement he found himself in, and he will have to extricate himself.
Thank you very much. On that, we have just a few more minutes to let. Maybe you wanted to finish about how the agitation for Biafra is influencing the election in Imo.
Yes, and again, I think the point is really very critical about how information is being used. So Nigeria, looking at the separatist agitation, is not just a question of a clash of ideas, but it's also an information war. And so again, social media is coming to play, technology is coming to play. And so if we want to sustainably address some of those questions, we must be ready. And incidentally, the president in his manifesto talked about, in one portion of it, I think page 5, where he was saying, we need to win the minds of people.
Yes.
So that aspect of needing to win the minds of people now has to come to play, because these kinds of agitations, you don't quell it by necessarily by force. It's something you have to sit down and discuss and find a way forward for it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. We have just about 2-3 minutes left on the show, so let's use all of that for Bayelsa. What do you think is going to happen in Bayelsa politically in terms of the spread of the parties? We have so far Labour Party won presidential elections in many states of the southeast and the south. But so far we've had just one governorship election won by the party. Are we expecting the second one in Bayelsa or even Imo?
Unfortunately, when you come to question of election in state, you cannot use what happened at the national level to judge what will happen in the state, because this is more subjective. The candidates, the individual, the citizens are looking at the candidates, and in Bayelsa State, coincidentally, APC have a candidate, Silva, Tinubu Silva, that has been a governor before, minister, coming with a lot of experience, and he wants to build on where he stopped.
But I thought the courts have disqualified him.
Huh? No, he has been reinstated. He's going to contest, and eventually he's going to win. And but what is critical at this very point in time, I still want to go back to that, is media information literacy. We need to take actions as political stakeholders, whether you are the INEC, you are the political party, you are the politician, the stakeholder, the leaders. We need to take deliberate action to curb, even when the separatist group, when you go into their conversation, you see that there's a lot of misinformation going on there entirely. So winning minds, we cannot do the business of winning mind without coining the true narrative. You know, media, you have a lot of role to play. Political stakeholders will have a lot of roles to play, and we, civil society organizations, have a lot of role to play. Every stakeholder have so much role to play to ensure that, you know, we entrench a media culture that will be healthy for the future of our democracy and the future of the democratic governance.
I think that's an appropriate closing statement. Thank you very much, Mr. Amsfree Ajanaku, for coming on the show. Thank you, Mr. Shehu Atta, also for Prince Shehu Atta, for coming on the show. And thank you, Nigerians, for staying with us on tonight's edition of Sunday Politics. We hope you join us once again when we meet you. We will meet here on Sunday next week to bring you yet another edition of Sunday Politics on Trust TV. My name is Suleiman, and have a good night and an even better week ahead. Bye-bye.